And by the way, I have, I actually was going to take it to another level. And I said I'm working on something fascinating. Is one of the things today that I'm doing is, my vision is to get at our requirements from a client in just like an everyday text and um, click a button essentially, which is not really, but so to speak, and get on the other end the specification of the system, which I'm talking about all the entities, the workflows. So someone, like yourself can come and tell me, Barak, I'm doing the podcast on a weekly basis. These are my processes automated for me. So we're going to take your words, put it in the machine, and we're going to get a specification that essentially is matching the structure of my backend architecture. And this is not wishful thinking. This is actually happening. And I want to say, I know I can dive into this forever, but the approach that I took is probably reusable to every business owner. It's not just for coding. Most of the stuff is a high level approach. Ask ChatGPT to build a system for
Yeah.
me.
So,
Yeah.
so I want to understand the example that you gave. Okay. So I have a business and I have prospects. I do marketing, then I create prospects. Out of them, I want to call some of them or send them emails or send them information. Then I want to sell them, and some of them would start a project with me. And let's say the project is, I don't know, a service which is outside the online business. Okay. How do I describe it for you? I tell you, okay, I'm looking for people and I'm going for LinkedIn and doing this and that. And then I find the people who are, it sounds good for me. And how do you do the implementation out of what I just described, which I think most online businesses more or less would go to Facebook, LinkedIn, do the marketing, then find someone to
Exactly.
lead. Like, how do you do it? Like, give me an
Well, you
example.
you have a process, and your
Yeah,
process is essentially is essentially, let's say that we are talking about podcast session or a live session that you are setting up. But before you set up a live session, you need to have a person for that session. So I see here, and this kind of develops, but I see here essentially two main entities. The first one is sifting through like candidates. Okay, so you have some sort of search process, right? So
right.
you got yeah, you got, one entity is candidates or people, just call it people, and you have a large list, and each one of those people is not the same. I'm talking on, the information system level. When that person is like a line is a record in my information
Yeah,
system, and that record,
sure.
it it goes through stages. So if I want to automate what you do, and throughout those stages, you do stuff, right? If I'm talking about a person, and I'm going to divide it to person and in a session. So the person kind of for me is like, starts when you reach out to someone that potentially looks good, and ends up when you say, okay, that this is a podcast in the making. That person is a suitable guest. So then starts the podcast record. For that person, you still need to do some things that, by the way, are very similar to just like a CRM process. You have to reach out to them, maybe send an email. That email can be automated. You need to send maybe a booking link. So you can do that like in a back and forth in WhatsApp, or you can just like click a button and that person gets an email with your Calendly link, and so on. And each one of those steps is a state. Okay, so you can think of like a block, like blocks in your flow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
when you describe something for me, which I mean I described it for you, which
yeah.
probably kind of follows maybe in a way what you do. So I take that and then we put it in one of those. I use Airtable for that, where you have to click buttons to get stuff happen, rolling that state. And what I described to you here, and I'm going to bring it up to the AI. This is actually a methodical way of thinking. And when I started kind of trying to automate it, you can't just tell the AI, create a system for me and it happens. You need to break it down for them to simpler, more bite-sized chunks. So I requested it to describe for me, and I hope this is kind of it's clear to most of my our listeners. I
Hmm.
said to build for me a pseudocode. which is kind of it looks like a code, but it's not really. That describes the process. So this is
Yeah.
kind of like scaffolding that helps me take us to the next step of building the actual
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
This wasn't possible without the AI.